Now, for the first time ever, we are going to go out of repitch mode and into cycles mode. Just a reminder that in repitch mode, when we're playing a chord and we're playing low notes and high notes, we'll see how the playback head moves. Okay, and now when we go into cycles mode, the first big difference is that now when I play a chord, it's going to try to keep everything still key tracking correctly, but also the same speed. So you're going to hear more artifacts in this mode than you would in the repitch mode. And that can be useful. So for example now, like that already is a very cool, interesting effect and might be something I would consider using, okay, as compared to the repitch mode. Just depends on what I'm going for. And with speed as well, this is not going to impact the pitch or the key tracking. This, because it's splitting it off into these little sections, these little cycles, it's really working hard to make sure that it stays like locked to the root key and key tracks appropriately. So let's bring the speed down a little bit and let's listen to this now. And the same thing is true with formant, okay? We can shift the formant around, but essentially our root key should be staying the same. It's going to drastically impact the timbre, but we should still be key tracking properly, unless something goes wrong, which it can go wrong, of course, but it should be keeping it the same. So that still sounds like C major, okay? If I get rid of it, that's still C major. Let's go let's do something drastic. So it's interesting. But essentially, what you need to realize is that if you're modulating or using a modulator onto formant and having it move around all over the place, you don't have to worry that your instrument is going in and out of tune. Now, of course, if your source material is all over the place or you don't get your root key correct, then you're going to run into some trouble. Now, when we go and get really, really close up and we start to create more classic style wavetables, okay, then maybe you will have to worry a little bit more about it. But let's go ahead and right away, let's go into the freeze mode. And now this time when I play a key, we are going to hear a sound, okay? And essentially now what we're hearing is, I believe, because this is our starting position, we might just be hearing that little tiny bit right there from the start position to that first cycle. That might be wrong. It might be playing this first cycle here. It doesn't really matter. But essentially now I can move through the signal and have it start to trigger different cycles. Until maybe I pick something that I really like the sound of. That's not a bad one. Might need to roll off a little bit. And again, we can adjust the formant control. And this is just a great little technique when you're tired of always working with the polysynth or you're tired of always working with the phase 4. You're gonna have to do some heavy duty effects processing, but at the same time, this sounds nice. And let's actually just check and see if this is still like key tracking correctly. So let's go in here and let's add our M tuner again, just so we can see if it's close. Okay, so I'm playing a C, that's giving me a C. So very good. I'll sometimes have this up just to be sure, just to make sure something's not like really falling out of place. Okay, so that's how that works when it is in the frozen mode. Don't forget, you can of course modulate all of these things. And modulating formant is something I would strongly encourage you do because it adds a whole nother texture to the sound. It adds a whole nother timbral component to it. All right, but that's us just working with a single cycle. What's more fun to do, I personally think, is to find a section of the sound that you really like and that you want to use, okay? So now it has thrown off our starting position. And that's because I had the playhead there. Okay, so one other thing I haven't shown you yet is that you can get this to kind of work like a wave scanner if you go down really low on the speed. Let's go up higher. And you can also get to move backwards. So again, depending on the source material that you have, you might be able to do something more with that. But what I want to show you is the way that I would actually create more of like the classic sort of wavetable. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a section of the sound that I like, and I'm going to create a loop that's going back and forth. And let's see if we can find something. I want it to be pretty short. Something like, let's say, that distance, and we want to line the start position up right with that. So around 566, if we can get it there. If not, it's not the end of the world. Okay. And you'll notice that here we don't even have those crossfade options because it's working with those slices. It's working with those cycles, so we shouldn't have to worry about clicks or pops or whatever. And now it's up to us to find a speed that works really nicely. That's pretty cool. And if you didn't like this section of the sound, you could always try a different section. So maybe instead we're gonna try this little section here. This may not be as interesting, but we'll try it. Very different sound already. It's really bright though. We could definitely make a really interesting sounding pad out of that if we wanted to. And what I'm gonna do is, with the formant control, that might be the thing that I take an LFO on. Okay, so let's just add an LFO. We're just gonna have it moving and sweeping slowly. And this is not gonna be a complicated patch by any stretch of the imagination. And also, the other thing I would consider doing here is checking the M tuner first, because now it is jumping all over the place a little bit more than it was before. And so what I might do now would be to go in here and have it detect the root key. And it's still telling me it's E3, so hopefully we'll be okay with this. We may not be. Let's see what it's telling me. I'm playing a C right now. So it's sort of hovering in that range. It's bouncing around a little bit. But that's okay, I think it's close enough. I'm not too concerned with it at this point. Whenever you're playing it back and it's in the context of a track, that's when you're going to have to be more careful, and at the end you might need to try to tune it a little bit just to make sure. So we're going to take our LFO and we're going to route this to the formant. I actually think I liked it more when it was on the higher end there. And we're going to slow this guy like pretty far down, but so it's still moving. Maybe change the shape just a little bit. Okay, I'm cool with that. And now what I would be doing is I would probably be going and stacking voices and doing some effects processing. So let's do a little bit of effects processing, pause the video, come back, and we'll listen to the pad sound I can generate. All right, so we're back. I did a bunch of effects processing. I changed some of the positioning as well inside of the sample because I think it made it sound a bit better. It's a little more interesting, especially going through the loop. So let's go ahead and listen to what we came up with. Okay, so there you go. Certainly we could do a lot of tweaking, and it just so happened that when I was hearing that part of the signal, I thought, ooh, maybe like a shimmery type pad would work. It's just as likely that when you're doing something like this, that maybe you select a part of the signal where like you'd want to make like a sub bass, or maybe you can hear something that's going to turn into a really good lead sound. This is just how it is when you are working in the sampler and doing these sorts of things. Very creative tool, a good way to kind of get yourself unstuck. If you're not sure what sound to use next, maybe just grab a sample, throw it in the sampler, and hear where it takes you. All right, let's move on.